Jill stands in the kitchen, another morning of making breakfast, as she does what little she can to please her husband Richard. Despite their financial struggle, when out of nowhere she hears the familiar sound of Richard's sandals under his massive weight, and his daily complaining that always ends in the phrase, "This is bullshit." Unfortunately for Richard, she will have no choice but to eat a potential canned meal. As Richard enters the kitchen, while scratching his ass through his boxers, he sits down to eat, wondering why hasn't Jill not finished with his breakfast yet, suddenly demanding service from her. "Hello woman, today, come on, hurry up bitch, and serve your man." Jill breathes heavily, but composes herself and responds with the sweetest and most comprehensive voice she can muster. "I will be right there, sweetie." Jill walks over to Richard and places a can of tuna in front of him, while hoping for dear God Richard doesn't flip out. Richard asks with anger and confusion, "What the hell is this? What am I, a fucking cat?" Jill tries her best to explain herself, responding, "It's the best I could do babe. Look, I put mayonnaise on it. You like things with mayo." A furious Richard responds by smacking the can of tuna to the side as it falls to the floor. Richard begins to scream like never before as drops of his saliva fly out of his mouth. "Tuna, all I get is fucking tuna. The fucking cat eats better than I do, you worthless, scrawny tramp." Jill begins to panic, not knowing what you say as tears begin to form in her eyes. "Babe, please calm down." Richard smacks the table, making a sound that echoes across the apartment, followed by yelling, "I damn my luck ever agreeing to marry you. You are useless in the kitchen. And you are even worse in bed. I bet you think a blowjob is filling a mattress with air." As Jill becomes slightly frustrated and angry, she tries to excuse herself for what she thinks is a poor behavior for a wife, feeling ashamed of not fulfilling Richard's needs to perfection. "Richard, I already told you, I'm not comfortable doing those things." Richard responds with, "Bullshit, you are a woman, you are supposed to obey your man, I own you, I should replace you with Sky, your boss. A beautiful brunette doctor with a great ass, a real woman, and I bet she wouldn't mind if good ol' Richard gives her a meat injection." Jill begins to sob, feeling how her heart is stomped on mercilessly by the words that come out of his mouth. Richard sees how much it's hurting Jill, and double dares himself to hurt her even more, as it excites him to cause her harm, followed by pretending to be a hospital speaker. "Oh, Dr. Sky, a very horny man with an ugly wife needs a sponge bath." Jill warns him to stop. "Richard, please stop. I seriously do the best I can on a nurse salary. I have enough with Sky making my job miserable to have to deal with your shit." Richard slowly and menacingly proceeds to stand up, while staring at Jill with a serious look in his eyes, asking her, "What did you just say? Bitch, are you getting fresh on me?" Jill begins to feel her heart in her stomach as she takes a few steps back, knowing that what will come won't be good. Richard runs towards Jill with a raised open hand as Jill stands frozen, with a million thoughts running through her mind. But suddenly, in a surprising turn of events, Jill grabs onto the hand of Richard with strength Jill didn't even know she had. As her hand acts within its own will, squeezing the hand of Richard tightly, almost causing pain, and with clenched teeth filled pure anger, Jill responds, "If you ever lay a fucking hand on me again, I swear to God I will castrate you with a tuna can lid." As Richard stands there, stunned by Jill's sudden show of strength, she releases his hand and steps back, her chest heaving with adrenaline and fear. She can't believe she just said that, but at the same time, she feels a strange sense of empowerment. It's the first time she's ever stood up to Richard, and it feels pretty damn good. But the moment is short-lived. Richard's shock quickly turns to anger, and he lunges at Jill, grabbing her by the throat and slamming her against the wall. "You think you can threaten me, you little bitch," he growls, his face inches from hers. "I will show you what happens when you cross me." Jill gasps for air, her hands scrabbling at Richard's fingers as he tightens his grip around her neck. She can feel herself starting to lose consciousness, her eyes begin to slowly roll onto the back of her head. As a heartbreaking tear slowly flows down her cheek, deep within her, she knows she cannot let him win. She must fight until the end to preserve a freedom, even if it comes at a price. Whether she wins or loses this war, she will fight back. The pain and humiliation that lives within Jill suddenly morph into anger and a need to survive at all costs. followed by Jill angrily pushing the face of Richard away from her, as she scratches his eyes, causing him to squirm in pain. Suddenly Richard proceeds to dart his tongue out in an attempt to tongue kiss her, making the stomach of Jill turn with disgust as she visibly starts gagging, wanting to throw up, as his tongue is about to touch hers. Jill opens her eyes wide in shock, thinking to herself, "Oh fuck no," followed by the mother of all kicks towards his groin, making Richard to momentarily lose his breath, sounding like he just came out from underwater. Jill runs out of the apartment, not caring to leave Richard or anything behind her. Whatever happens now, it will be in the hands of destiny. As Jill runs out of the apartment, her heart pounding in her chest, she doesn't look back. She doesn't know where she's going or what she's going to do, but she knows she can't stay there any longer. She runs down the stairs, her feet barely touching the ground, and bursts out of the building onto the street. The second the foot of Jill touches the cold, moist ground, Jill takes a deep breath, feeling the slight cold against her skin as the sweet smell of rain fills her lungs. For the first time in a long time, she feels free. The price of liberty sometimes is expensive, but Jill is willing to pay for that price. As Jill stumbles through the merciless downpour, her soaked hair plastered to her face, she wraps her arms tightly around herself, shivering uncontrollably as the icy rain pelts her skin. Her bare feet squelch in the mud, each step in agony as she wanders aimlessly, lost and alone. Time seems to stretch on endlessly as she walks, the minutes ticking by with excruciating slowness. It feels like an eternity has passed when Jill finally spots a bus stop up ahead. She quickens her pace, desperate for any respite from the relentless rain. As she draws closer, Jill sees a figure huddled on the bench, also wrapped in her arms. She hesitates for a moment, unsure whether to approach or keep walking. But the lure of shelter proves too strong, and Jill finds herself sitting down next to the stranger. "Just great, the bitch is here," Jill mutters under her breath, turning her head away from Sky. Sky turns to Jill, her expression softening as she takes in the woman's bedraggled state. "I can be a bitch, but I'm also a woman, and my hand can always be yours to hold whenever you need a friend." Jill hesitates for a moment, unsure of what to do, but then, almost involuntarily, she finds herself leaning closer to Sky, drawn to the other woman's warmth and comforting presence. Sky, sensing Jill's need for reassurance, wraps one arm gently around her, pulling her close. Jill lets out a shaky sigh, feeling some of the tension drain from her body. She rests her head on Sky's shoulder, nestling into the crook of her neck. For the first time in what feels like forever, Jill feels safe, protected, cherished.